We're so delighted to have you all with us and our special guest, Danny Jalil. I first met Danny in a Singapore writers group, Kafarati, and was immediately impressed by his creativity, his capacity to visualize, but also his scholarly approach to researching content. Who was the man they called Enrique the Black? I'll let Danny explain this. Suffices to say, he was a Malay boy taken from his family and forced into slavery during the Portuguese invasion of Malacca in 1511. Later christened as Enrique, he had to quickly adapt to a new religion and to the strange new lands of Portugal and Spain. And over to you, Danny.
Hi, everybody. So this is the beginning of the story. Prologue, May 1521. Enrique walked along the shore with Raja Charles, his head low, constantly bowing to hear what the old ruler was saying. He stopped and the Raja looked up at the young man, then averted his gaze to the wide sea. If I could cry an ocean for him, I would, Raja Charles said, thinking about Magellan. All the seas cannot contain my tears, Enrique told him. He wondered how long it would be before they would look for him. The expedition seemed to have done exploring. They were in a nothing place, in a nothing land, with nothing left to invigorate their spirits. I appreciate the stories you have been telling me, Enrique, about your fleet's journey here, but you have told me nothing about yourself. How did a boy from Malacca come to be with the Spanish? Enrique sighed and took a deep breath. The breeze grew colder, and he reckoned it dried the tears forming in his eyes. I was just a boy when they took me, he began. So this is the prologue of Enrique the Black. It's actually a scene much later in the future, but this serves to encapsulate the entire feeling and plot of the whole story. And then we get into the past and Enrique's history. So this is a little animation I made for the book, which is also the cover. Just a little intro. Who am I? I wrote two comic books, Lieutenant Adnan and the Last Regiment, and Elizabeth Choi, her story. They were both illustrated by my close friend Zaki Rahman, who in fact introduced me to the publisher Asia Pac Books. And this was off the back of my first ever published novel called The Machine Boy. It was a winner of the Beyond Words Young and Younger Award way back when. And of the strength of this, the publisher said, okay, he's got the chops to write the comic book and so on. And in fact, doing the comic book, in fact, this is a re-recording. So I just want to say, doing the comic book was another challenge because the comic books are like one bubble can only fit so many words. So I was quite verbose in the beginning. And then I was given the task of actually doing the lettering. That means I created the bubbles and put the words in the bubbles and all that. So I had to cut a lot of dialogue out. So that was an education itself, right? So writing comics is totally different art form from writing a novel. But I like to do both. I love both mediums anyway. They both have their own strengths and advantages and disadvantages. So I just want to talk about the inspirations as well behind Enrique the Black. I first heard of this historical person from this book by Hidayah Amin called Malay Wedding Book cost $50. Right at the back, there's an appendix or something where they mention about this person, Enrique the Black. He was the first Malay person to circumnavigate the globe. And this got me interested to do research and to come up with this book. So I have to thank Hidayah Amin again for inspiring me. I did meet her once and gave her a lot of thanks. During my research, I did find out that this character was given, or he had a novel treatment a few times. I wanted to be better than the previous novels. I hope I achieved that. The very first one was written in the 50s by an author named a Singapore Malay author named Harun Aminur Rashid. The title is called Panglima Awang. Panglima actually means warrior. Awang is like the general name for a young, handsome Malay chap. Right? So the character of Enrique, his real name is never ever mentioned in any history books. So even then, even way back when in the 50s, when Harun Aminur Rashid wrote it, he had to create a name for this character. And then the next book I saw was in the library called Enrique Malacca. And then as far as I know, Enrique the Black is my version of it. It's something like how they had, they had Spartacus, then they had Gladiator, similar stories, but a more modernized take on things like that. And if you don't mind, I'll continue the synopsis. Okay, so Enrique the Black synopsis. During the Portuguese invasion of Malacca in 1511, a local boy's father is killed. The soldier Ferdinand Magellan takes the boy as his slave. After the invasion, the boy is taken to Portugal and christened as Enrique, but given plenty of freedom by Magellan, who spends his time planning an expedition to the Maluku Spice Islands, the world's only source of spices that were highly valued in European markets. Magellan approaches King Manuel of Portugal for funding, proposes sailing to the Spice Islands from the east while sailing westward, seeking to avoid the need to sail around the tip of Africa. King Manuel finds this idea ridiculous and sends Magellan to settle a dispute in Morocco instead. Magellan suffers a lifelong limp from that battle. Angered by this, Magellan defects to Spain and convinces the young Prince Charles of Spain via letters sent from his cousin Francisco Serrao, who is already stationed there, to fund his expedition and claims Enrique, being from that region, can help the expedition translate. Magellan befriends Duarte Barbosa and marries Duarte's sister Beatriz. Magellan hires Italian scholar Antonio Pigafetta to chronicle their journey. Magellan also hires Cristobal Rebello, his son from a previous relationship. Rui Falero, Magellan's business associate, has a bad feeling and warns Magellan not to go. Magellan ignores him. His armada of 5 ships set sail in 1519. While stranded, Magellan stops a mutiny against him while Enrique and Cristobal bond over the fact they're both surrogate sons to Magellan. The armada encounters the Tehuelche tribe. They trick one of them, a giant named Uno, back to their ship. They soon set sail along the treacherous Strait of All Saints, but their food supply dwindles. They suffer from scurvy. Uno the giant dies of malnourishment. Months later, they land and gather food at Monon Island, and through various meetings with other island folk, are brought into contact with Raja Kumabon of Subu, modern-day Cebu, who warms up to them when he realizes Enrique and him speak Old Malay, a language common amongst the chiefs and also amongst the archipelago. Magellan takes it upon himself to convert the island women to Catholicism, justifying it as less sinful for his men if they are fornicating with Catholic women. Later, Magellan's priest converts Kumabon, his chief consort, and the islanders to Catholicism. Kumabon tells Magellan of neighboring island chief Lapu-Lapu from Mactan, who refuses his conversion. Magellan decides to go to war with Lapu-Lapu, an idea his men disagree with. Magellan declines Kumabon's reinforcements. Magellan's ships can't enter the jagged coral shores of Mactan. Using this advantage, Lapu-Lapu's men slaughter the Spaniards. Rebello dies in the melee. Enrique sees Lapu-Lapu kill Magellan, and Lapu-Lapu asks Enrique if he is a free man. The battle ends. Enrique wishes to be set free from bondage, as per Magellan's will, but Duarte Barbosa refuses. Angered, Enrique finds Kumabon, who tells Enrique to invite the Spaniards for dinner as consolation for their loss. Pigafetta refuses to attend. During the dinner, the Spanish, Duarte among them, are in truth slaughtered for their failure at the Battle of Mactan. Enrique flees. Pigafetta and the Armada, upon seeing Kumabon's men chase after Enrique, escape and make their way back to Spain. Enrique steals a boat and goes to Mactan. Kumabon's men find him, but Lapu-Lapu kills those men. Lapu-Lapu challenges Enrique to a fight. If Enrique wins, Lapu will arrange a way out of Mactan. Enrique manages to injure Lapu-Lapu, who is impressed and ends the fight. Enrique is given a boat and thanks Lapu as he sets sail on the open sea, now a free man. I just want to continue and mention the struggle, all the hard work taken to get this book published. I had at least 2 rejections from Epigram Books, local publisher. I tried to go for the fiction prize, but I got rejected twice, and they gave me constructive criticism on how to improve the story. I think I wrote roughly 8 drafts or rewrites. When I say draft, it's not just deleting certain words and all that. I actually had to rewrite the whole thing like from scratch. That's what I mean by draft. So it is hardcore, right? I put the old draft on the left and the new draft on the right. And then I kept typing and editing as I went along. So it was really, I really wrote the book 8 times, I think. I wrote the thing from 2016 to finally seeing it published in 2021. So it was a long process of editing, a lot of time spent also doing research. Every time I found something that contradicted my old draft, I had to keep changing it again and again. So it was a lot of hard work. I want to also share the process. Um, this poster here are various drawings of the characters in my head, or as I saw them. So you can see on the bottom left on the Spanish conquistador, the center the character of Lapu-Lapu, and on the right the character of Raja of Mabon, who converts to Christianity. He is he's known as a short, stout man, as far as I understand, when this story happens. And the very top, of course, is Enrique. There were 2 books that influenced me, or they gave the best research. Before that, I was like, needle in a haystack, trying to find various bits of research and trying to consolidate everything. So I have to thank Lawrence Bergwijn for writing his book Over the Edge of the World, which is the most well-researched story of Magellan's journey across the globe. I want to thank him again. And on the right, you see another book by, I believe, a Portuguese author, Jose Manuel Garcia. Also a book about Magellan. Similar idea. Um, these are the names of all the, there's this little chart on this book, right? It's all the names of all the people in on the expedition, all this part of it, right? So all these were very useful and vital, especially towards the end when I was editing the book. And I showed Russell this last week when we first spoke. If you see these my little squares here. So every square represents not necessarily a chapter, but an idea. So one square represents a portion of the story, and I kept moving and adding squares right up to the end. So I basically plotted the whole book before I wrote it, I believe. I can't really I remember exactly because you know how writing is, right? They always kind of like roll over one another, right? So, and I just want to share this. I managed to get this screenshot here. If you see on the left, the name Amber Dawn is the name of my editor. So she, throughout the whole book, right, you see that's comment number 69. I think there's like 120 something comments, So all these little bits were going on during the editing. Kind of painful, but they do work out and I appreciate it because they do make the story better in the end. So you have to take it with stride. The only problem was there was once I submitted it, there was a long silence of a few months, and then they give me this and say, okay, I need you to amend all these things within a certain time frame, right? So that's when the crunch time is, and that's when you start having like sleepless nights and time away from your friends, so you can't socialize during the editing period. And actually, I just want to do a step aside for a second. Do you see this thing called Henrietta? Right? Yeah. So this was just a fun thing I was doing on the side. This was basically Enrique the Black in outer space. So instead of Enrique, I turned him into a girl called Henrietta. So these are just drawings I did for fun, while I was editing and waiting. So these are little pieces of artwork. So I basically converted. Do you remember I mentioned there's a giant called Uno? So that's the space version on the right, and then there's some alien in the center, and these are all the various characters I did just for fun. And this was a concept for a spaceship I was trying to do, but I might make a space version of it one day. Who knows? So I just want to talk again about I want to continue. About influences. A big influence on how to even start, because Enrique is sort of like a biopic about a person that kind of existed in real history. I managed to watch Lawrence of Arabia on Netflix or something. So I saw that and I, blown away by it. I've seen bits of it, bits and pieces of it when I was a kid, but first time I've seen the whole thing, I was like, wow, right? So I have to do something like this, I hope, in novel form, right? And these are the other influences. The big one is on the right is this movie called Steve Jobs. Have you seen it, Russell?
No.
Okay. It's obviously about Steve Jobs, Apple founder, co-founder. What is interesting about this biopic is that they don't do a whole life story thing. They just focus on three very specific events in his life, especially a product launch. There's three separate product launches, and all the hoo-ha and chaos that happens, or that supposedly happens before, during, and after each launch, and how it affects his personal life and all that. Very interesting way of doing a biopic. And these other two movies that you see here, Elvis and Oppenheimer. Of course, they came out after my book came out, but I just want to give them a shout out because I did like these two movies. So there's no like one way to do a story about a person's life, I guess. So even for Enrique, if you see the other note I put there, Christopher Nolan, he is a movie director. He did Oppenheimer, right? He's very famous for non-linear narratives. That means he might have something happen. Let's say he might have the ending, an end scene at the beginning of the story, and you don't know how it works until right at the end, and how everything kind of merges together. That's the style I kind of try to adopt for, especially the prologue. The prologue that you see is actually right towards the end. That's actually after Magellan's death, and then you kind of get sucked back into the main story itself. So I was very influenced by that kind of style of storytelling. So a lot of flash forwards and some flashbacks, right? If it's okay, we can continue with another piece of story. Yeah. I just want to show this because I had a friend who liked this ending scene. This is the end of chapter 2. There's a battle. This is where the Portuguese have invaded Malacca. And okay, I'll just read the little bits here. We have to stop them before they come any further. The senior officer agreed with what Fatima instructed. In case you didn't know, Fatima was she was a sultan, sorry, like a sultana, right? Like just a Malay empress, right? Yeah. So she was present during this actual war when the Portuguese invaded Malacca. So she was part of the beginning part of the story, right? So anyway, there's a whole side story about her, but anyway, the first unit held bows and arrows that were drawn taut for a quick second before they fired. They were not accurate as that was not their purpose. Hundreds of arrows shot high and arched downwards into the water and dotted the shoreline with poisoned arrow tips that pierced kneecaps and thighs and boots and feet. Hundreds of Portuguese soldiers fell and created an effective bottleneck that gave signal for the second unit to come express themselves at the forefront. Their favorite mode of expression was explosive, lighting the fuses and firing spears of fire that lit the night sky and crashed into the Portuguese ships, the sea beginning its slow swallow of the burning ships into its belly. Alfonso resigned himself to fate. He had not yet had the chance to dock all the ships and his men. In the heat of this moment, there was only the nagging in his head of all the naysayers that told him not to attack Malacca. Hating himself for this, he spun around and contemplated if he should order his men to retreat. But he was a man defined by his unyielding determination, by his need to make things better than they were, especially if the thing he needed to make better was himself. He was fueled by the anger of his mistakes and the need to prove his peers wrong. He would capture Malacca, just not the way he had initially planned. So that's the end and hook for chapter 2, which I tried to do hooks for every chapter. So hopefully you could turn to the next chapter and keep going. More of a pacing thing. Yeah. You have anything to say, Russell, before I continue?
With the first question.
Yeah. You have anything to add before I want to continue? Or can I continue?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I also want to point out, this is one of my favorite bits of the book, actually. Oh, am I taking up too much time, or?
Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Okay. Let me just read out if I got time. Okay. The Italian walked along the streets of Seville, streets very. Let me just set this up. This is a chapter about. I mentioned there's a interpreter called Antonio Pigafetta. Not interpreter, sorry, a chronicler. He's an Italian scholar who Magellan hired to chronicle the whole adventure in real life, the whole journey. So without him, we wouldn't have any idea of what Magellan did. Because he survived and he wrote all these things in his journal. That's how we know about history, about Magellan's history. So yeah, so this is the introduction of him. So let me start again. The Italian walked along the streets of Seville, streets very much like his own back in Italy. In one hand, he had a journal and a pencil, which made the other hand free to touch the city walls. Touching these walls made him feel that the dream was real. He was truly in Spain. Slung around his shoulder was a small leather bag that held more papers and another journal. His eyes were like an artist's, in the sense that he loved the beauty of the smallest things, even the cracks on walls, and especially the cracks and ruins of people's faces. And he longed to capture and express all the details in some shape or form. But alas, he couldn't draw to save his life, hence he painted with words. He crossed the market and picked up the peach, bringing it close to his face to smell and savor its sweetness before he placed it back. He was not here to buy provisions today. When he had first heard of Magellan's ambitions, he had been in Seville for 3 months, awaiting the true commencement of the long voyage to circle the Moluccas Islands on an unusual western route. The audacity of such an idea excited Antonio Pigafetta to no end. He considered himself a learned man and a man of religious conviction, but was yearning for adventure, and the scholar had left his usual circle of diplomats and learned people to find Magellan. So that was the introduction to Pigafetta. Is it okay if I show you a trailer?
Please do.
Okay, sure. So that's the introduction. I'm quite a visual thinker, I think. So I draw a lot, and I sometimes have this habit of making book trailers. So they're not great, but they kind of help set the tone of the book for me. So just sit back and enjoy for the next minute and a half.
Powerful. Really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can't thank iMovie, the app that helped with templates and all that. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to continue a little bit. So there were certain themes I wanted to express with this story. So there were themes about slavery, obviously, because since Enrique is taken as an indentured servant, there's the idea of freedom, like how free can one be as an indentured servant or as a slave, or as a person like Enrique, being bound to one man for the rest of his life, right? And of course, themes about religion, because he is, I presume, or at least in my story, right? I presume he was from Malacca that made him a Muslim boy. So he was taken by Magellan, who was Catholic. So he was actually rechristened as Enrique when he went to Portugal. And so, like, does religion identify your identity? Does it give you any choice? He probably didn't have much choice right until the end, right, when his master died. Right? So even then, also he was still bound by the Europeans who didn't want him to leave. Right? So there was a lot of things going on about him, at least in my version. Because when uh, what I did was I tried to find actual scenes and then try to insert him into the scenes. And if I did find historical evidence that he was there, even better. It got me more excited. So it gave a lot of authenticity to a fictional story. You know, a lot of it I had to make up, just to, well, I mean, to give more expansion and to give a lot of power to the story, because there was so little mention of him in history books. Just like one name of his name is mentioned on one line of a text, and it's every once in a while. So digging it took me a lot of time. Yeah. So speaking about choice, right? I'm gonna go to this is the final bit of my presentation. So this is actually the final scene. I think I spoke to Russell about this. I rewrote this, especially the last line of this, right? Quite a lot of times, and I how I wrote the book wasn't in a linear fashion. It was more like I wrote any scene that excited me, or I felt easy or exciting enough to do, and then I kind of like jumbled them and edited them together. But that was how I wrote the book. It's not how I write every book, I guess, but it seemed to work for this particular story or this particular project. So let me read the final scene. Anything in italics is actually another person talking. These are quotes from other people from a previous scene, which is what I said about like Christopher Nolan. He likes to do non-linear bits, so I try to get that flavor in paper form. Okay, so I'll read again. I'll read this. I mean, he might decide to travel the region and never lay his eyes on his homeland ever again. He has no ties to anyone now. He thought back on his life of all the things that happened to him in the past decade. The fall of Malacca, wondering whether wondering where Sultan Mahmud Shah was now. He thought of Albuquerque, of his mother and siblings, and bowed for a moment to offer his father a silent prayer, and did the same for his master Magellan. He raised his head, his belief in God's greatness validated by the expanse of the open sea. He ran his fingers through his hair to put it all together, gathering it into a knot. He is a rover, a wanderer, a nomad. He is a free man. He laughed because he was finally free of bondage of the past, free to create his own future. It had taken a decade, but he finally chose to acknowledge his real name, not Enrique the Black, but the name his real parents had given him. The name tasted strange and foreign on his tongue. He mouthed it gently to get used to saying and hearing it again after all these years. Saying it built up something within him. He wanted to scream it out and ran to the Zhao's bow, clutching himself loosely, almost losing balance, though his sea legs kept him from falling. He called out his true name, and it echoed forward in time, into distance, into history. Finish. So that was the final line, which I like a lot, and it took me a long time to get the exact arrangement right. It's like a musical melody, you know. The music and the rhythm of saying it out loud. Yeah, I was very fussy about that final line. So yeah, like I said, I worked on the final line, then I worked backwards to the front. Yeah, and I guess yeah, that's it for my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much,
Sorry
Dan.
if sorry if I went a bit over time.
No, and if you've got some time at the end, what we could do when people have gone is simply re-record the beginning, and then it's easy enough to edit it all together into the correct sequence, because we missed it. If you've got time.
Sure. Yeah, I think I do, yeah. You just have to let me know. Yeah.
We could do it some other time as well, because you've blurred your background, so you could be anywhere, anytime, and we could do it. I'll use the same background. I'll edit all of this out, obviously.
Okay, sure. You need me to turn off the sharing thing, or?
Oh yeah, that'd be useful.
Or do I? Yeah, let me go back to Zoom. Stop share.
Thank you.
All right.
So,
thank you.
Thanks so much, Danny. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Look, there are not many of us here, so I don't think I'll be particularly pedantic about people muting themselves. If you could just indicate by raising your hand if you'd like to say something or ask Danny a question, that'd be great. I know Tony would like to.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. All right. Tony runs another group, Inno Lit, and so she's very interested. Philip, over to you.
Hi, Danny.
Hi.
I came in a bit late, but
Okay.
Enrique the Black is a slave.
Yes.
What is his real name?
Good that
We
you
don't
asked me
know.
that question. Yeah. Who said we don't know? That is kind of true because in every instance of his, at least as far as I could research, nobody knows his actual name, and that is the shtick I kind of use in the book. We never mention or we never hear about his real name in the story. We just mention him as a boy. There's when it kind of evolves, right? When we first meet him as a, in fact, the story is a 10 year span from 1511 to 1521. So when they first meet him, they call him boy in, I think, Portuguese or Spanish, garoto, right? So he's always been called by derogatory things before he's rechristened as Enrique. So historically speaking, I believe we do not know his actual name. In fact, there's some argument about him not being Malay at all. So you never know.
This is very good, Danny, because I know someone in my town where I live who is the
Right.
descendant of a Buganese slave.
Right.
And he was given a name by the Dutch who enslaved him.
Okay.
But we can never find his real name. And so in your story, because that's what slavery is about, it's about destroying someone, and their big thing of identity is their name, to find out about who this is and their place in history. And the slavers take that name. That's the first thing they do. They take the name from you. And that's really captured that well. So for me, that's very moving.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. In the story, I think, like in the last paragraph or the last page, right? He knows his name, but it's not revealed to the audience, or to the reader per se. So I want to keep that because in the beginning I show him with his family. They might know each other's names, all that, but just as a thing, I don't know what they call it, but I just got the shtick of the story is that I don't give his real name.
This is very good because my friend's ancestor never told anyone. He went to live he ended up living in Holland, but he never told any of his descendants what his real name was. He had a name given him by the Dutch, and then he was baptized, and he gave himself a version of his slave name in Dutch, but he's never told anyone. And some of his ancestors work in the museum in Amsterdam, which has been studying slavery, but they don't know. No one knows. And so in your book, not naming him is very important and very moving.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay. Well, thank you, Dan.
Bet has just said a big thank you. I didn't see where her message was.
Right.
So it's flashing on the screen. Let me just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the end bit there, Danny, where you didn't say his name, because it just really takes him back to being his own identity to himself. And to the rest of the world, you don't need to know. But this is me to myself, and I'm being true and honest to myself. So I did love that bit.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I like the way. Yeah, I like the way that, like in my book, I end it in a way that you cannot tell what the rest of the story is about. So
right.
In that last couple of chapters, in that last couple of paragraphs, used like the freedom from bondage and from the past. It makes you wonder in just reading that, because a lot of people do skip to the last page to read the last page. Yeah. So in reading that, it's like, well, what bondage? What was the past? It draws you back into the book. Yeah. To yeah. And one thing, when you're writing, do you, because you're drawing as well, do you actually see the scene and see the characters in your mind? You actually see this, and then the words start to come along with the visions.
I think so, but it's a very vague image. It's not like it's not as clear as a movie image. Just imagine it looks like a Van Gogh painting. Just like little ideas of things floating in my head. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is just at the top of my head, right? There was one particular scene, at least in my version of the story, right? I have no idea what happened in real life, right? There's a side argument about the Philippines. The Filipinos think that this character might be a Filipino person instead of a Malay person. And since I'm Malay, right, I'm Malay by blood, so of course, obviously, I think it's Malay, right? There's my own cultural bias, but in either case, right, in my story, when he was, how do you say, when he was being taken by the Portuguese, right? Yeah, I had that scene very clear in my mind, like a movie scene. So I think I thought of that, then I wrote it down in words, and I tried to polish the whole thing, the whole vibe. Yeah. So it's sometimes visual, sometimes like I say, they keep rolling one on top of the other. Sometimes I write the word, then I see a visual at the same time. Yeah. There's no particular process. Yeah.
But you could see your characters. You knew, you had a good idea of what your characters looked like. I
believe so. Yeah. Yeah. That's how my mind works, I guess.
So also, we've got a couple of comments there, one from Bet and one from Tom. So Bet says, want to say a big thank you for this great presentation. I admire all your work, all the work you have put into researching the book, and make me feel very guilty, and makes me strive to do something more about my stories. Yeah. And then Tony says, thanks, Danny and Russell, for a very enjoyable and thought-provoking session. All the best from Scotland, Tom.
That was Tom.
Yeah, it was Tom. Yeah, Tom. Sorry. Yeah, Tom. Yeah.
Hi, Danny. Hi, Russell. This is Vinny from Singapore. And
hi, Vinny.
Hi. So wonderful to see all this, because it gives us inspiration as well. Hi from Kafarati. It's great I think we were with you during the beginning process of this as you were writing some parts. So that was very exciting, because now we get to see it in full fruition. So yeah, wonderful, and congratulations.
Vinny, I'm glad that you're here. I wish I could see you. Then we can turn on the camera. But anyway, I met Vinny first, and then Russell maybe later. Hi, Vinny. This writing group called Kafarati. So over the years, I've read out many more my writings, and this story included, and the Kafarati group were very kind enough to give me great feedback, and and to get my stuff published. So I think I spoke to Vinny a few times about how the story was going, and she gave me a lot of insight. I can't remember exactly what she said now, but thank you, Vinny. I'm glad you're here.
And it's great to hear Kafarati mentioned. Thanks, Vinny.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
I haven't seen them for a long time, so I hope we guys can meet again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyone else? Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And I was most impressed, Danny. I knew it would be good.
Thank you.